In the early 1900s, there were more than 40,000 bridges in the rural counties of England alone. A significant number of them were built not by contractors or councils, but by the people who lived beside them. In the American countryside, the tradition was the same. When a bridge washed out, the community did not wait for the county surveyor. They gathered their own stone, hewed their own timber, and put it back themselves. It was work that could not be paid for in wages, because no one had the money to pay, and so they paid in something else. They paid in hours, they paid in sweat, they paid in the quiet knowledge that if the bridge failed, it would fail for all of them. The spring flood had come fast that year. The river had risen overnight, brown and swollen, carrying branches and debris downstream like a freight train. By morning, the old stone lintel had been knocked clean out of its seat. The heavy beam that spanned the gap between the two pillars lay in the water, half submerged, its surface worn smooth by 100 years of weather. The men came slowly at first, one or two, then a handful more. They stood at the riverbank, hands in pockets, looking at the damage. There was no foreman. There was no plan. There was just the shared understanding that something needed to be done. The blacksmith arrived with his horse and chain. The farmer from the hill brought his strongest team of oxen. The carpenter came with his measuring tools and a length of rope. They worked without speaking much. There was no point in talk. The river had made its argument, and now they had to answer it. The chain was looped around the fallen lintel. The oxen were coaxed forward, slow and patient. The stone came out of the water with a groan, dripping mud and weed. Men in shirt sleeves waded into the shallows to guide it. By midday, the lintel was on the bank, and the real work could begin. This was not exceptional. Across the English countryside in rural America, the raising bee or work party was the default way of getting things done. Barns, bridges, fences, hay, nothing was built alone because nothing could be built alone. The economics of rural life demanded cooperation. One man could not lift a stone lintel by himself. One family could not afford the timber for a new bridge, but 12 families together could. The tradition stretched back centuries, but it persisted well into the 20th century because the alternative meant waiting for months, sometimes years, waiting for the county or the council while the river still had to be crossed. The children still had to get to school. The milk still had to get to the creamery. The bridge was not a luxury. It was the thread that held the village together. What made this work different from the modern equivalent was not the task itself. It was the relationship between the people doing it. When you lift a stone with a man, you learn something about him that you cannot learn by passing him on the street. You learn the way he braces his back. You learn the way he counts to 3 before he heaves. You learn the way he does not let go until the job is done. There is a reason that communities built around shared labor were tighter than the ones that replaced them. The physical act of working side by side created a bond that no amount of polite conversation could reproduce. You trust another person with your safety. You depend on their strength to complete what you could not complete alone. The bridge was not just a crossing. It was a monument to that bond, set in stone and mortar, built to last. And it did last. Many of these village bridges, built by unpaid hands with rough tools and local stone, are still standing. They carry cars now instead of carts, but the stones are the same stones. The craft is the same craft. The slow, patient, collective work of fitting one stone against another is still visible in every joint. Here is something the modern viewer rarely considers. The work was not the cost of the bridge, it was the benefit. The men who spent the day hauling stone and turning the arch did not see it as a burden. They saw it as a day of purpose, a day spent in the company of neighbors, a day at the end of which something real and permanent stood where nothing had stood before. The food that arrived at midday was not a reward for the work. It was part of the work. The bread and cheese and ale carried down by the women in baskets. The meal was the bridge, too, the laughter and the teasing and the quiet satisfaction of sitting in the shade with men who had just accomplished something together. That was the bridge they carried home at the end of the day. The bridge that crossed, not the river, but the distance between one person and another. You cannot rebuild a stone bridge in your backyard, but you can recreate the thing that the bridge represented. The next time you need help, consider asking for it. Moving a piece of furniture, fixing a fence, or simply getting through a difficult week, not as a favor, not as a transaction, but as an invitation. Ask someone to work beside you, to share the load, to be part of something that requires more than one pair of hands. And when the work is done, sit down together, share a meal. Do not rush off to the next thing. The meal is not a reward, it is the bridge. The spring flood came fast that year, and the men came too, not fast, but steady, one by one, until there were enough of them to do what needed to be done. By nightfall, the bridge was back in place. The stones were set, the lintel was seated. The river ran beneath it, as it had run before, and as it would run for 100 years after. They went home tired. They went home with dirt under their nails and a quiet ache in their backs. But they went home with something else as well, something that could not be washed off or wrested away. They went home carrying a bridge, not the one made of stone, the one made of something else, the one that stays.